All right, today is Wednesday, July 25, 2018. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes CSI Implementation Group. First up, let's go through PRs that need attention. The first two are design proposals. They're currently outstanding. Please take a look at them and provide any feedback if you're interested. Doesn't look like we have any other outstanding PRs that need attention, so we can move on to bugs. I believe Luis was working on picking up the attacher timeouts issue. I'm not sure if he had a chance to get to that yet. It doesn't look like he has, so we'll follow up with him next time. Next up is scaling issues for the Cube API server. Last status was that Matt Wong had a bunch of PRs on this, and a few folks were taking a look at it. I believe Vlad was the primary reviewer on that. Vlad, did you get a chance to?
Yeah, I looked at all of them and pretty much summed it up in the last couple of bullet points. It looks like Matt pretty much said that whatever he was looking into did not solve the problem.
Got it.
So the last PR I looked at is 837 toward the bottom. And that's where he had refactored the leader election and used informers, and that still didn't seem to solve anything. So I left him a note on PR 837 asking him if he's still looking into this or if this is it.
So is the answer to do a larger refactor?
I think that was, well, I'm not sure what you mean by larger, but he was refactoring the actual the package that the external provider and provisioner.
Okay.
Yeah, that package. I forgot. It's in the incubator.
Okay, and that's already underway as well?
Yeah, that's exactly what he was looking into, and that's where in PR 837 he concluded that whatever he thought was the issue did not solve the stalling issue.
Got it.
So I'll ping him again to see if he has any more clarification to add.
Cool.
If not, maybe we'll add that as a to-do for this quarter as well. If I don't hear from him back.
Yeah, it sounds like this might end up being a larger project. It would be great to get Matt on these meetings to give status updates.
Yeah, I think that's what I asked him to do. I don't know do we know if his handle is also a Slack handle? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I know he works with Brad and those guys, so maybe we can ping one of them too.
Oh, okay.
He's at Red Hat, so.
Okay, all right.
All right, cool.
I'll follow up.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Vlad.
Sure.
All right, so that's good progress. CSI volume source incompatible was merged last time, so we're good there. Oops. And then CSI incorrectly setting FS group type.
Yeah. I posted some questions, was it yesterday?
Yep.
And I got some feedback from both Michelle and Ufield. I forgot who that is.
Haman.
Haman, okay. So Michelle was thinking, well, maybe we need a new capability. And I'm not entirely sure if we do or not. So I'll keep the conversation going to figure out where we're going to land on this. I'm still trying to clarify the issue that volume system like NFS, shared volume system like NFS, apparently do not provide a file type, so we cannot take into account FS type when determining whether or not to use FS group for certain for certain volume types. So I'll see if we can avoid introducing a new capability to determine that, which kind of basically boils down to what I think we kind of punted for a while, which is mapping volume capability to spec attributes. Was it the volume attribute field? But we knew that there was not a clear mapping between those two. So maybe this definitely probably will force us to revisit that.
Okay. All right, so we'll see where that discussion lands, and hopefully.
Yep, I'll continue with that.
Perfect. All right, thanks a lot, Vlad.
Sure.
Next up, somebody added a miscellaneous item, move CSI host name from node annotation to node status, and add attachability and other stuff there later. Does anyone have the context on this issue? Okay, so it looks like it's opened by Jan, and so initially node annotation stores the mapping between Kubernetes names and CSI driver node names, and he's suggesting move that into a first class field instead of an annotation, which seems like a reasonable thing to me. This kind of ties into the driver registry that we've been talking about as well.
Right.
So
why is this named status? This looks like some kind of info, right? Status seems usually being like pending or ready. It's
node status tends to be, well, in general in Kubernetes, you have spec and status. Spec are the desired state. It's what doesn't change. It's the requirements from the user. And status is everything that is just temporary and can potentially change and is programmatically changed by the different Kubernetes components. So status in Kubernetes is not necessarily a traditional status, but more like these are the fields that are used to maintain, I guess, mutable information about that object.
Okay.
So we'll follow up with Dion on that. Before we go on to Q3 planning, let's make sure we finish up Q2. But Luis is not on the call, and I think the remaining outstanding items were documentation. So we'll have to wait until Luis is here, hopefully on Friday, to get an update on that. And then we can move on to planning for Q3. So CSI entry block volume support. Any status updates on this one?
Well, one thing I've been, I guess, the issue and feature, I need to add some more information because I guess the planning committee or whoever's doing planning asked me to clarify some stuff, whether or not we're going to go beta. And as far as code, not yet, but I'm planning to get on.
Yeah. And I think I'll leave it up to you to decide, like based on the scope of the work, whether we go beta this quarter or not. Mm-hmm. It may be that this quarter we basically stabilize the alpha implementation, but just fix all the bugs that we're aware of.
Yeah, and, which is pretty much what the work is, because I don't think that API or that API hasn't changed, so it will definitely be stabilization work most.
Okay. So I'll leave that up to you. If you want to make the call and keep it alpha this quarter, I would be okay with that. I would support that.
Okay.
Cool.
I'll let you.
Alpha this quarter and stabilize. Sure. Cool. Next up, actually, I guess Snapshots is part of CSI. There's a new repo for it. And we got an update on this from Jing and Ching last week. Do you have anything else to add on this, Ching?
So basically, we had a few review meetings. It's in good progress. Then we're waiting for someone from SIG Architecture to review the APIs, right? So I'm just not sure how soon that can happen.
Okay. I think we've got Thawkin engaged on that review, right?
Yeah, I think yes. I think someone's the one person added a. I think it tracked it in as the backlog issue for SIG Architecture. So I believe someone will be.
SIG Architecture interested in this if we're completely out of tree? Or are they interested in the PVC part?
I don't know. I think it's because the API part looks like the API reviewing is part of that, or I'm not clear on that. But I see that the person who organizing the SIG Architecture meeting added this review in their backlog. I don't know how they're how they're related. Maybe the API group is part of the SIG Architecture group, or what? I'm not sure.
Maybe ping him on Slack and ask for clarification.
Okay.
Make it clear that this is external to Kubernetes, except for one component, which is the PVC part, and we will go to SIG Architecture when we're ready with that.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Do we still need to go to? We still need to go to SIG Architecture. I thought.
So it's not necessarily SIG Architecture. I think it'll just be a general API review.
Okay.
I don't think we need to go to SIG Architecture. The feedback from SIG Architecture was no, snapshots cannot be part of the core, but if you have smaller, more generic functionality that needs to be part of the core, we're open to that. So one of those pieces is a volume source on PVC provisioning. I think that's a generic enough use case. It makes sense. We have multiple concrete use cases, including snapshots and other things. Once we have a concrete proposal for that, we can just do a standard API review, and the correct people should be on that.
Okay. All right.
But I don't think we need to do any more architecture reviews for this.
Okay. Okay,
cool.
Thanks.
Thank you. The cluster plugin registration mechanism. We were all dependent on where this CRD thing is going to land. I think the last I spoke with Jan, he was not confident that we need a separate object for drivers. He thinks that with the use cases that we have, we could basically hack around with the existing objects that we have. I think I'm probably the last proponent of pushing for having a separate object for each driver. So we'll have to sync up with Jan, and it might be that I am the one that'll try to push towards that design. But we can follow up with that offline.
How do you envision that? Because I don't think we've had a meeting in a while. But are you saying using CRDs or just
I want CRDs. Ideally, I want a first class API object. If I can't get a first class API object, I want a CRD.
Okay. So that's what you mean by...
That's what I want. Jan, I think, is not convinced that that's necessary. He's okay with just sticking things in the node, for example, or other objects.
Okay.
I would like to avoid that if at all possible.
Okay.
Also, this cluster plugin registration mechanism, I think we should switch the assignments here, right? Because it sounds like Jan is doing the primary work for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And skipping the external attach, detach, same thing.
Yeah.
Also being run by Jan. Replace volume reconstruction. Oh, that's not CSI library. Travis, any updates on the Mount library refactor?
No, not really yet. It's something I'm starting on, but I don't really think I'll have anything to say about it for at least a week.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
I guess we can change the yellow and say no feature repo.
Yeah, this should say bug fix, feature repo, never. All right, that should do it. Okay. Kubelet device plugin integration. So Sergey and Vlad, you guys were working on this, moving this to beta. Any progress on this at all?
I have not looked at that. Last update is Sergey was looking into moving that, so I'll sync up with him to see what's going on there.
Okay, we'll follow up with that on Friday, hopefully. So in terms of, I was talking to Brad offline, and I think what we really want to do is move the core of the CSI API to GA by the end of the year, so Q4. And the biggest blockers that I see are going to be this kubelet device plugin registration mechanism, because that is key for how volume plugins interact with Kubernetes, and also the cluster plugin registration mechanism, because we can't go to GA and then add that in later.
Right.
And then a couple of these features for ephemeral volume, like skip external attach, end up being dependent on that. Once we have those three things, I think, nailed down, we are good to go for 1.0. Features like block volume, I don't think block the core API. We could still move the core CSI API to 1.0 without block volume. Okay. And then block volume can be promoted on its own separate pace, more slowly as it becomes more mature.
And do the other features have to be at least beta for us to move GA? Like, for instance, the plugin architecture?
Yes, which is why I think it's critical that we nail that down this quarter. So the kubelet device plugin registration, if we can move it to beta this quarter, then we're clear to go to GA next quarter. Yeah. So in terms of priority, I'm actually okay dropping the priority on the block volume stuff to 2. Okay. And then keeping the kubelet device plugin registration as 1. That way we're making progress on the stuff that's absolutely critical for getting us to beta.
Okay, because I know
to GA.
Some of the stuff is still very fluid, especially the kubelet device plugin. It's still changing.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, because ideally, let's nail that down as quickly as possible and decide what are our plans to go to GA and how are we going to get there by the end of the year. If we could get that nailed down, then we're in a good place. If we keep putting this off, the problem is folks are implementing volume plugins already for CSI, and we can't continue to change something so fundamental underneath them.
Right.
We need to nail that down.
Okay.
All right, cool. Thank you. Prepare CSI for GA in Q4. We just talked about that. Pluggable end-to-end, don't need that. Conformance, CSI conformance. I don't know if this is critical for 1.0 either. I'm okay leaving it as a P2. CSI external provisioner scalability issues. So this is what you were talking about, Vlad. And it looks like that work is in progress and may require more refactoring. Topology, dynamic provisioning to beta. We don't need to talk about that. Let's move on to CSI stuff. Yeah, CSI drivers, CSI library entry, inline volume support. This is, again, tied to, actually, no, this is independent. So there's a PR after this. Jan needs feedback on it to move forward. So
yeah, I looked at that too, and right now I think it's a little bit undecided.
Okay. I think it might end up being that we're just going to have to do inline the way that we do inline for all the other volume plugins, which is we support it and support it for all volumes, attachable or non-attachable. But ideally, we can get away with something where it's only for attachable volumes, and that might make things a little bit cleaner in terms of users shooting themselves in the foot.
Okay.
But that one, I think it's just a call that we need to make, and then implementation shouldn't be too difficult. But also, that's important to nail down before 1.0 as well, because that's how users interact with the plugin.
Okay.
Passing workload information, this was in progress. The use cases are required. Actually, Brad would probably be the right reviewer for this one.
Okay.
He's working on it on the CSI side. I think he's hoping to have something by next week. And something got deleted by 1 here. Let's take a look at version history. Line 25. There we go. All right, I'll fix that after the call. But it's also related to the workload info. It's updating the CSI spec for workload info. Add support for dynamic volume per node. Hemant is working on that. I don't know what the current status is. We'll have to sync up with him on that. Usage and capacity metrics. We had a good discussion in the CSI call today. And it looks like we have agreement on how to move forward on the CSI spec side, so that's good. Add support for volume expansion, also good progress there, also discussed in the CSI call. Topology support for external provisioner. I think Chang and everybody are out at Google Cloud Next, so we'll sync up with them next time. And that is all that I have. Anything else anybody wants to give a status update on or discuss?
So I haven't heard we talked about the design for externalizing existing drivers to CSI. The last thing we talked about was a design that I think David was talking about, was heading.
Yes, migrating.
We haven't talked about that in a while.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's still on. Finalizing the migration story. Yeah,
okay.
It's still on the in the design phase for this quarter.
Okay.
The goal is that we nail down the design this quarter and start implementing next quarter. But hopefully David can join us on the next meeting and give us an update on that. In fact, I'll call him out here. Oops. Okay, cool. So hopefully we'll get David to give input on that. Anything else?
I think that's it.
All right, cool. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you on Friday.
See you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.